So, will the Democrats be able to unseat Scott Walker? Staying with us, as I mentioned, David Horowitz, author of the new book, Take No Prisoners, The Battle Plan for Defeating the Left, and as promised, for the second straight day, Josh Orton, senior advisor at Progressives United, former leadership aide to Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid. And Josh, you're a man on the move. You were in Madison, Wisconsin yesterday. You're in New Jersey today.
Right, this is where my family's from.
Okay, so you're in the Garden State, but how do you reap a victory of votes back in Wisconsin against Scott Walker?
Yeah, I think Scott Walker's in real trouble here because while he won the recall race a couple of years ago overwhelmingly, since then he's had some significant problems. Here's the thing. Scott Walker campaigned for governor originally in 2010 on a jobs promise. He promised to create 250,000 new jobs in Wisconsin in his first term. He's nowhere near that, not even close. And so basically what's happening is he's trying to avoid that promise. He hasn't lived up to it. And I think it's a pretty straight shot for Democrats to argue that Scott Walker has not worked for Wisconsin. He has not created the jobs that he promised. Now, he's traveled all across the country building his fundraising base. He's been in New York, he's been in California, he's been in Texas. He went to the Adelson's conference in Las Vegas, but he hasn't focused on Wisconsin. Mary Burke has a business background. She was an executive at Trek Bicycle, a company that still has 1,000 employees in Wisconsin. She has that background of creating jobs. And so Scott Walker's flailing around a little bit. He actually attacked Trek Bicycle, a huge Wisconsin employer, as a way to try and bank shot against Mary Burke. It's just not working. And I think his numbers have changed a percentage or two since the recall. And, you know, I'm starting to feel a little shift in Wisconsin about the November election.
All right, Josh, we appreciate your perspective. David Horowitz, the ad that Josh just mentioned, and we just saw at the outset of the break, looks like Scott Walker was taking a page out of your book, trying to define his Democratic opponent. Yet there is such a concentration, or has been historically, of unions and liberals in the dairy state. Is Scott Walker in real danger?
They're not liberals.
Leftists.
You saw them. They're communists. You saw how they tried to shut down the legislature when they didn't like what the legislature was doing. These are people who are at war with America. Scott Walker is one of the most brilliant and brave Republicans. I hope he pulls this out. I don't know the details of what's going on in Wisconsin in terms of, the polls and things like that. The campaign against Scott Walker is a campaign of the communist left.
That's garbage. That's garbage. And in fact, it's ironic.
I know you guys can't handle the truth.
Well, it's ironic because Scott Walker has never worked in the private sector creating a job, and he's attacking a woman who's from a company that created 1,000 jobs in Wisconsin. It could not be more preposterous to make that argument.
I didn't interrupt you. You don't care about jobs. If you did, you would abolish these public sector unions, government unions. They're a walking conflict of interest. They're strangling not only a state like Wisconsin, but states across the country because they get a stranglehold on the political process. So if you really cared about jobs, you would be for abolishing all those unions that are organized against Scott Walker.
And speaking of the unions, Josh, we had that ruling yesterday, and so now the left is under assault. That's the way they put it. The union's under assault. Does this counterintuitively? David likes it. Truth be told, I may have a past history alongside that too. But I also know the left really tries to rally over these questions of public employee unions. Counterintuitively, will this decision by the Wisconsin Supreme Court add to the vigor and perhaps the venom and the ferocity of the race run against Scott Walker?
Well, it's interesting. From the beginning, it was always clear that Scott Walker's attack on public sector unions had nothing to do with the budget. The public sector unions were already willing to make concessions regarding contributions to their own pension and their health care plan, But Scott Walker went further because Scott Walker is almost 100% political animal. Now I know politically minded folks like David, that's the best type of politician or representative. But in Wisconsin, that's not what this election is going to be about. Obviously, the Supreme Court ruled the way it did yesterday. People expected the ruling to come down, and I understand that people are upset about it one way or the other. But again, I think that's important. I think that Mary Burke has made clear that she supports collective bargaining rights. But again, this campaign is being run on jobs, and as much as it's easy to sort of call names and sort of smear your opponents, there's a very, very clear contrast here between a governor who's never created a job in the public sector, made a promise of creating 250,000 jobs in his first term, has not met it, has failed, and is at the same time attacking a huge private employer in Wisconsin and his opponent, who came from a family and a corporation that created 1,000 jobs in Wisconsin. So it just
hey Josh,
the
just a couple of points. A couple of points. Are you prepared to say now? Do you agree with Mitt Romney that corporations are people? Is that what you're saying now about Mary and her family?
Certainly not. I think the corporations
okay.
are a useful entity to create jobs. Now, I don't think they breathe. I don't think they grieve when a family member dies. I don't think they can dance.
All right. Well, just one other acknowledgement. I'll let David in on this. Only a minute left. Go ahead, David.
I don't think Josh or Mary Burke give a damn about creating jobs. As I said, these unions, which Josh supports, showed their fascist face to the whole country when they crowded into the legislative chamber and tried to shut down the government because they didn't like the results of an election. That is fascism. That's who these people are. They know how to talk. They talk jobs.
David, did you know that Scott Walker doesn't even allow people to write in chalk on the sidewalk in front of his Capitol anymore?
You are a fascist. One of the other things that
Scott Walker.
All right. Okay, hang on.
They're supporters of voter fraud.
All right, you got to admit, Josh, when everybody gathered in the state capitol with the intent of stopping the work.
And you know what? It was peaceful. And you know what? I'm sorry that Republicans.
It wasn't peaceful. It was violent.
I'm sorry that people were
threatening. It was intimidating. It was designed to shut down the democratic process.
Okay, wait, listen. We got to stop right now and let each of you speak.
The left is trying to.
Hang on, David. Okay, now look, we got a couple of minutes remaining. David, I'm going to give you a minute, and Josh, I'll give you a minute. David, go.
Another thing they do is that they're suing Scott Walker in support of voter fraud. The Democratic Party has conducted a massive campaign for voter fraud, and they do it that they're double speakers. J. Edgar Hoover once wrote a book about communists called Masters of Deceit. That's who these people are.
Well, Josh, he grew up in a family. His parents were communists. He's lived this. You counter his remarks here in the minute you have.
I don't know who he's fighting in his head. It's funny that he brought up voter fraud, because the state of Wisconsin was able to argue for the voter ID bill in federal court. They could not come up. The Republican Attorney General of Wisconsin could not come up with a single identifiable case. And the Wisconsin Supreme Court, in upholding the voter ID bill, named one. And it was a Scott Walker voter who voted multiple times, whose criminality would not have been prevented by the voter ID bill. So, I know, look, there's not any monsters under the bed. We're not coming with pitchforks. This has been a peaceful exercise in democracy. This is about creating jobs in Wisconsin. All the distractions and the name calling are fun, but in the end, this is about employing the people of Wisconsin and beating Scott Walker.
Well, gentlemen, we thank you. Just make this observation. Obviously, I come at it from the right, Josh and David, but if you have to show your ID to cash a check or to use a check at Target or the grocery store, if you have to have a photo ID to get on an airplane, what is the hindrance having an ID to vote? Not to mention having a photo ID to get into a federal building where the federal court decides constitutionality. Gentlemen, we thank you both for a lively discussion on what is afoot in Wisconsin. Josh Orton, today from New Jersey, David Horowitz from Los Angeles, California. These two gentlemen have definite opinions. What is your opinion? Why don't you tweet us your comments at Newsmax TV, #America's Forum, or visit us at facebook.com/Newsmax. We're coming right back.